Okay, so first let's talk about the authorization piece, which is the same in both applications. So as soon as we get into the app, the first thing we do is a basic OIDC sign in. Once we have a user signed in, then we actually check to see if the user has a refresh token in the back end. That's what the synchronization auth wrapper does. And once we know that they have a refresh token, only then do we actually render the UI, which is the sync view component, which is our entryway into the drag and drop feature and the synchronization. So we're not going to look into most of these files because they're standard OAuth templates that we used, but the main thing that we want to talk about is synchronization auth wrapper, which is the custom functionality that pertains to the API. So this is a React component, and it takes in for props the user that signed in and also the children of this component, which in this case is going to be the sync view component. It's its direct child. And then it also has a state variable called is authorized, which maintains an internal state of whether the refresh token exists for this user or not. Then we actually go into checking for the refresh token. We do that by calling the get authorization information call. If this does not look familiar, this is exactly the same call that we saw in the API page under authorization, get authorization information. If we scroll down, we can look at a sample response. So is user authorized is one of the properties it returns. If this is false, that means there is no refresh token. And then a URL is returned to which the user can navigate to generate a refresh token in the backend. Now this is going to be the application's responsibility in this case to make sure this happens, and then the user can finally be authorized and this will return as true. So that's what's happening here is we check to see if is user authorized is true, and if it isn't, then we redirect to that URL that's returned in the response. But if it is, then we just set that local state of is authorized to true. And then finally in the render functionality, we check to see if the user is authorized, that is if they have a refresh token. If they do, then render the children, which is going to be that sync view component here, so we can go into the application workflow. Otherwise, present this loading overlay that says authorizing for synchronization. Let's take a quick look at what this actually looks like. So there's initial login. Once the user logs in, we check to see if there's a refresh token. In this case, there wasn't, so we got redirected to this URL where we authenticated and got a refresh token in the backend. Now we have a refresh token and we can actually go into the application again, and we finally get the UI and we're ready to drag and drop. So that's how authorization works. Now in the next video, let's look into how we actually call into the synchronization API in the storage app.